Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lukas, and with me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And welcome to the F1 round number 4 Spanish Grand Prix preview episode here. It's the Spanish Grand Prix. There's not much to get to in terms of the actual news itself. We all know what this track has in store for us this weekend in terms of racing product. Not expecting much. If we can get one singular overtake on track this weekend, that would be lovely. That would basically just complete our entire expectations. But we'll be optimistic. We're hopeful that we can get an entertaining race nonetheless, and we'll see what happens here on Sunday for F1. But I have one news and notes to get to, and then we'll look at our fantasy picks as well for this upcoming weekend for the Spanish Grand Prix, and then make our predictions for the podium, and of course, the best of the rest outside of the top two teams of Red Bull and Mercedes. So let's get right into this episode here, and we'll start off with the news and note here, starting with Romain Grosjean. And he's going to be back behind the wheel of a Formula One car for the first time since his Bahrain Grand Prix accident that we saw at the end of last season. Obviously, if you haven't seen the crash, what are you doing? Are you living under a rock? But the crash was obviously very spectacular. Suffered some injuries. He's over at IndyCar now, running the road courses, not the ovals, but the road courses themselves. So he's ventured on to new things, but he's going to be returning to his roots here in Formula One for a one-off chance to get back behind the wheel of a Formula One car to drive Lewis Hamilton's title-winning Mercedes W10 in a demo run on June 27th, and as well as June 29th for a full test for the French Grand Prix weekend. So really great to see that Mercedes is giving Romain Grosjean this opportunity. It's been rumored for quite a while that Toto Wolff would give Grosjean a shot here. It was just a matter of when and what kind of timeline worked out for Grosjean and for the team itself to put this together. And funnily enough, it's his back here for the French Grand Prix. So really great to see that Mercedes is helping Grosjean to get a bit of closure to what was obviously not the perfect ending into the sunset that we all wanted for Romain Grosjean for his F1 career. But really excited to see Grosjean back behind the wheel of a Formula One car.
Oh, it's awesome. It's the perfect storybook type result that you would possibly hope for, because there was no way that he was going to be able to get back behind the wheel of an F1 car in normal circumstances. So for a team like Mercedes, with the limited testing time and everything that is in Formula One right now, you have to kind of work around a little bit, go with a car from a different year, all these kind of things. But the fact that they were able to make it work, it's not a coincidence that it's at the French Grand Prix either, his home track as well. Just everything there just makes it so that it's a nice storybook ending for Formula One fans, for Romain Grosjean himself. And it was really cool to see him out there in the Mercedes gear, because this is a guy that early on in his Formula One career had some real strong runs with Lotus back in the day, back when he was teammates with Kimi Räikkönen. Things didn't really progress the way that he maybe hoped for in his Formula One career. Started out great at Haas, and then Haas just kind of stumbled down the grid a little bit. Didn't want to go out in Formula One the way that he did, walking out of a torn up car on fire, all these things. Yeah. That's not the way that somebody wants to end the chapter of their career and go on to something else. So it's really cool that we're seeing Mercedes give him this opportunity at the French Grand Prix as well. It's going to be great to see Grosjean back behind the wheel of a Formula One car in France as well, the home track, as I mentioned, and get some time with his family as well, because in North America, when he's doing the IndyCar schedule, he's away from his family due to different COVID protocols and whatnot. So it's a difficult situation for him there with his family. So the fact that they were able to make all of this work schedule-wise, COVID protocol-wise, for everything is awesome stuff to see.
It's wholesome content, and that's what you love to see.
Yes.
So really great to see that for Romain Grosjean. So wishing him all the best for that opportunity there. And, it's not like he's going to be trying to set any world record lap times. Just enjoy that last experience here behind the wheel of an F1 car. He'll go for it, but, I think
you only get to drive a Mercedes Formula One car
he'll just
once.
be out there. I'm sure they'll let him pull the plug at one point in time where they just let it loose for a couple of laps and see what this thing has.
He doesn't have a contract. Hey, whether they tell him or not, I think he might pull it a little bit loose a couple of times, but we'll see.
Yeah, he just goes 5 seconds faster than the lap time that he's been required to reach. But a really cool story there for Romain Grosjean. Yeah. It's something that every fan really loves to see. So That is the only news and note of the week. Very obviously quick turnaround from Portugal to Spain, so not much to get to in terms of Formula One action. Let's get right into the fantasy picks here for this weekend. Mine's staying very, very similar to what I had for the Portuguese Grand Prix.
Do you have any changes?
Well, on the other hand, Kyle has said, in terms of swap out, I do not have any swap outs for this weekend.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with the same 6 kind of driver and constructor, and the only thing I'm changing is my turbo driver moving from a different driver this weekend. So that's it. I'm making sure I get that right this weekend instead of last week where I turbo Pierre Gasly instead of Sergio Perez like an idiot. But it was my mistake on that one. Hopefully I don't make a similar one here, but you have many more changes for your fantasy lineup this weekend, don't you, Kyle?
Many more. I've got 2 lineup changes and then a turbo change.
Okay. Let's look at the similarities then, I guess, for our lineups here for this upcoming weekend for the Spanish Grand Prix. Max Verstappen. Do we need to spend any time on Max Verstappen? Because it's pretty self-explanatory why he's in our lineups.
Well, I think it is important to talk about him at least a little bit here, just because of the recent dominance that we've seen from Mercedes at this racetrack. Obviously, he's staying in our lineup because he's the heavy hitter that we've put in our lineup, so we're not going to change it. But I think it is important to talk about maybe Red Bull's chances maybe as a whole this weekend. Verstappen, of course, got his first career victory in 2016 with Red Bull at this racetrack, but since then 17, 18, 19, and 20 all Lewis Hamilton victories. Do you think we can maybe see it a little bit closer? Of course, last time 2020 I think it was that Verstappen qualified third, finished second though, 24 seconds back of Lewis Hamilton here. Throughout practice time so far, it's looked fairly even. FP2 was a little bit rougher for Red Bull in that one, but at least in FP1, it was very close at the top there. So I feel good about at least the competitiveness between the 2 teams coming into this weekend. Mercedes definitely had the advantage last time out at Portimao, but I think we'll see a much closer track. I think Verstappen as well. Good track for him, of course, won his first race here, as I mentioned. So a bit of history there for himself. Yep. Since then, not the greatest results, but we'll see where he ends up this weekend. But yeah, no reason to change him at least for both of us here.
No, absolutely not. He's got the best value of the guys that is at the top of the running order each and every week. Yep. And, Hamilton's value is just a little bit too high to put him in there. He's going to get you the points, no doubt. But Verstappen, for what he brings to the table week in and week out, it's just too easy to keep him in there. So definitely riding the Red Bull wave there with Max Verstappen this weekend for the Spanish Grand Prix. I don't really know what you've done to the rest of your lineup. That was the pretty much self-explanatory one. You haven't given me any hints. So just kind of get into your differences, I guess, because I don't know what we have similar, what we have different.
I want you to guess at least a little bit as to the changes I've made. So last week, I had Verstappen, Sainz, Norris, Tsunoda, Ocon, and Red Bull in my lineup. I'm making 2 changes here. Not necessarily what I'm changing it to, but what do you think the 2 pieces that I'm swapping out are?
Well, I think you may switch the constructor this weekend, maybe to a lower one so that you can get more value for another guy, get a more of a heavier hitter in your lineup this weekend. I think Charles Leclerc may be someone that you looked at this weekend. I could be wrong on that, but I think you swapped out obviously one guy in your lineup, and I think I'm going to go with one constructor you switched out.
Who do you think the one guy is?
That's tough. You went with 2 cheap options last week, so I don't know. Maybe Sainz? Maybe no. You wouldn't switch out Sainz at his home Grand Prix.
Am I harsh like that?
I don't know. Did you switch out Lando Norris?
I did not. I am actually kind of doubling down to a certain extent on McLaren there because they are my new constructor. Red Bull is out. McLaren is in as my constructor.
He's joined the dark side, ladies and gentlemen. Baby.
I needed to see a few races in just because Red Bull is the guaranteed kind of points in terms of the constructor, and that's why they're worth that much. But so far, we've seen from McLaren and to a lesser extent Ferrari, both of them get some pretty solid point stays as constructors, being many, many millions cheaper. And so as a result, McLaren is in as my constructor. Yuki Tsunoda is out of my lineup, and into the lineup with Tsunoda out, with the difference between Red Bull and McLaren and the 1.8 or whatever it was I had in budget left last time to get within 100,000 of my cap, Charles Leclerc is in the lineup. You had it right on that one. So yeah.
Okay.
From here,
I was thinking that. Yeah, that made sense.
So
Yuki Tsunoda was. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
We can get more into the specifics here, but that's the decision making on my side. But so that means our similarities are Sainz, Norris, in terms of the drivers, McLaren as the constructor, and then you've got Perez and Gasly, and then I've got Ocon and Leclerc. So I think we can dive into things here.
Yeah, for sure. We'll start off with the similarities then, because we have a couple now that you've made a couple of changes. We'll look at the drivers obviously first, but let's start off with Lando Norris in this one. Probably one of the best value usages that you can use in Formula One fantasy right now. Absolutely on fire at the moment, finishing, I guess it was 4th, 3rd, and 5th to start the season here. He's been on a tremendous roll here, consistently getting the points, and it's helped that Daniel Ricciardo's had a little bit more of a tougher time to adapt to that McLaren than maybe what we would have hoped. So Lando's getting that teammate advantage over him as well. So he's up 0.7 million over the course of the 3 rounds so far, making tremendous gains up to the midfield. I don't see him dropping Lando Norris anytime soon. As I mentioned last week in our fantasy preview for Formula One, Lando Norris is pretty straightforward for me this weekend. Had a decent result here last year. Let me just pull it up because I have it. Have it ready here. Finishing 10th.
I'm not in love with Norris at the Spanish Grand Prix. He's qualified 8th and 10th in his career at this track and finished 10th and then a DNF previous to that. So I don't love him coming into this weekend in terms of past results, but when you look at the value, when you look at McLaren, and when you look at what he's done so far this year, it just ticks all the boxes. And even if he qualifies 7th or 8th, given Ricciardo's struggles so far this season, I think you'll figure it out eventually here. So I'm not saying anything like writing Ricciardo off as the season goes along, but at least early on the season, until we see Ricciardo have that big performance where he outperforms Norris and has a really strong finish, I think you can safely bet on Norris getting the teammate bonus. And you can bet on Norris at least making up positions on race day if he keeps it clean, if not qualifying 5th or 6th right out of the gate. So as you mentioned there, value usage, it just makes too much sense to just leave him in the lineup and leave it as is. And in fact, I think more of the decision is to whether turbo him or not in your lineup. And you've got Perez, of course. I do not. So I don't know if you want to reveal your turbo yet. But I am going with Lando Norris as my turbo driver this weekend.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting that you went with him. Huh. I don't have him as my turbo driver. I'll say it for my next selection here whenever we get to it. But we'll get to it next. But yeah, for Norris, that's a cool one. I like that turbo play there on him. He's definitely, just a solid usage and a solid value pick, like we said. So for Norris and Verstappen, self-explanatory here. And then I believe we have Carlos Sainz. That's the other same one. Yeah. For Carlos Sainz, home race for the Spanish Grand Prix this weekend, and had a really great result here for McLaren last time out, last season, finishing 6th for the team there, beating Norris by 4 positions, obviously, last season. That's huge for him. And this time around, in the Ferrari that had a decent result here last year as well, with Vettel finishing 7th, I think he could be on the cards for a really great weekend here. Looks solid in the practice sessions so far as well. I think after the disappointment of the Portuguese Grand Prix where they messed up the strategy for him at Ferrari, there's a drive under Sainz this weekend to compensate for that and try and deliver some good points here, not only for the team but for himself at his home Grand Grand Prix. I think Sainz has all the makings here to have a really great weekend, and that is why he is my turbo driver this weekend. I really like Carlos Sainz this weekend. If I could have gone with Leclerc, maybe, but I honestly think there is potential that Carlos Sainz could outbeat or outduel Charles Leclerc this weekend. So that's why I'm going with him as my turbo driver.
I as well like Sainz more than Leclerc this weekend, even though I do have Leclerc in my lineup here. Carlos Sainz has never finished outside of the points at the Spanish Grand Prix. He's 6 for 6 in his career, and that's with multiple teams, multiple constructors,
Really?
and he's still gone out and finished in the points every single time. 9th, 6th, back-to-back 7th, 8th, and then, of course, last year, 6th. And that's to go with some solid qualifying as well. So an 8.8 average start, 7.2 average finish, 6th last year. I like the Ferraris at this point as just a little bit a step behind the McLarens at this point. But given the lack of overtaking, given Sainz's ability to adapt to the car so quickly at a track that he's been very, very strong and consistent at in the past, definitely like Carlos Sainz as both a play in your lineup, but especially for you as a turbo play. I think that's a very safe pick for a turbo choice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was thinking about obviously Sergio Perez, but I decided to take a little bit of a gamble here. Go on the home favorite here in Carlos Sainz.
Well, I don't know if he's the favorite anymore because Alonso's
I have a feeling
back.
that the 55 car could be good. Fair enough. I guess they can share the favoritism this weekend amongst the two of them. But yeah, for Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, those are our three similarities here for the driver's side of things for the F1 fantasy lineup for the Spanish Grand Prix. Let's look at some of the differences for the driver's side of things, and we'll finish off with the constructor itself. I'll go with, I guess, the highest paid guy that I have left here, Sergio Perez, as I mentioned. I have this money left where I am at max budget. I have $102.4 million as my total value of my team. So I've had a really good start to this season in terms of being able to balance this budget and being able to get both Red Bulls into my lineup here this weekend. I really like that a lot. I don't think they're quite on par with the Mercedes here this weekend. They'll be really close. I think it could be like a 1-3 kind of thing and then 2-4 for the teams this weekend for qualifying. And I could see that happening in the race as well. But for Sergio Perez, he ran well here last year, getting a top 5 finish for Racing Point, finishing 5th behind his teammate Lance Stroll. That was last year, but that still gives me encouraging signs that Sergio Perez can do something here this weekend. And he hasn't quite had the full clean weekend yet that we really are looking for from him. Was kind of had a poor start last week for the Portuguese Grand Prix that kind of set it back, where they couldn't really do that kind of split strategy that we were really hoping for, with trying to mess with the Mercedes strategy a little bit, where they could undercut and overcut or try something different. Perez was just too far behind. I think this weekend they could be a little bit closer, and I think they are a little bit closer on pace this weekend in the Portuguese Grand Prix as well. So look out for Perez. I think he could do something this weekend, maybe score his first podium for Red Bull, and we'll see what happens with him. But Verstappen and Perez, I can't go wrong with the Red Bulls this weekend.
Yeah, I just couldn't quite get Perez into the lineup. Otherwise, I would have in place of Leclerc. But for Leclerc, I like the Ferraris, maximize kind of the value there in terms of getting another big-name guy into the lineup here. Wouldn't have necessarily been my first choice. Perez probably would have been that guy just given the car and the track. Leclerc hasn't been amazing here either so far in his career. The big standout was a couple years ago where he qualified 5th, finished 5th. Outside of that, not as great. But again, he's the leader at Ferrari now. He's got that competition of Sainz. And I like him going into this weekend despite some of the maybe mediocre results in the past year at the Spanish Grand Prix. So hoping for a nice, solid, consistent day for Ferrari, which I know is asking a lot of them. But we'll see if that comes to fruition here this weekend.
Yeah, don't count your chickens before they hatch.
I'm not. Don't you worry.
They always have a way to screw things up. They always have a way to screw things up.
Just think about the mediums last week.
But yeah, that's 4 of the 5. Yeah. Hey, that's frustrating for Sainz there, but hopefully he can do something with that this weekend. But for our final picks for the driver's side of things, you have Esteban Ocon. I have Pierre Gasly. I just haven't Gasly is an interesting one for me because throughout the early parts of this season, he hasn't found the points that I'm really looking for. But the AlphaTauri was supposed to struggle last weekend at the Portuguese Grand Prix, so I'll kind of take that into consideration. For the Spanish Grand Prix, I think they're similar to an extent in terms of the track. So I don't know how much I'm going to get from Pierre Gasly this weekend. It just helps that he has a rookie teammate in Yuki Tsunoda that I can basically count on him outpointing him if he can have a clean race. So Gasly, a little bit of a slow start compared to what I was expecting, but I think he'll find his groove here. Maybe not necessarily this weekend. I probably could have gone with the cheaper option, but I don't want to mess with what I have right now in terms of my team. I would have gone with Esteban Ocon as probably that cheaper option, just based off of how much speed he seems to have. I didn't want to make that lose the value and something mess up for me after this weekend. So Pierre Gasly stays in my lineup for those reasons.
Yeah, Gasly's an interesting one because he is kind of the most expensive of that kind of like rest of the pack if you're talking about like AlphaTauri and kind of lower. But for myself here, I just didn't see a reason to take Ocon out or see any other kind of options that made it more worthwhile. I like Ocon a little bit more, or I should say I like the Alpines more than the AlphaTauris going into this weekend. And when I think about the lack of overtaking, it's more based on qualifying and just kind of maintaining your position. I like the Alpines in that regard. I still think Ocon is pretty undervalued when I look at some of the other drivers around his kind of valuation. He gained a lot in terms of the budget last week, so I'm expecting more of the same. I don't love him as much at this track. His debut here, qualified 10th, finished 5th, was awesome. Last year wasn't as great, qualified 15th, finished 13th, but Daniel Ricciardo also struggled a little bit last year, finished outside of the points. So maybe look more to the Renault as maybe the result there rather than Ocon himself. But that being said, the Alpines look pretty pacey so far in free practice. It's Fernando Alonso's home track, so you know that Alpine's going to be bringing at least a little extra in terms of the pace to maybe get Alonso that really, really good results here. I think it's going to be close between Ocon and Alonso, but I liked what I've seen from Ocon so far this year. I think he's really strong value at the kind of bottom end of the lineup there, and I just didn't see a reason to take him out of the lineup, so I'm going to take the swing once again on my boy Esteban here.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart move on your part to just keep him in there and just let him have a little bit of a consistent spell in your lineup here. Portugal, Spain, back-to-back weekend. I think there's no real risk involved in keeping him in there.
I could have gone with Alonso instead of Leclerc and then Gasly instead of Ocon there, which would have been an interesting one, but I just feel it's too risky in terms of I feel like Alonso's more likely to lose budget than somebody like Leclerc is. And similarly, I think that Gasly's more likely to lose budget than Ocon is. So it's maybe a different look you could go with if you have the options to kind of look around with. It's definitely a riskier one. So maybe going a bit of a safer route there with Leclerc and the big name and Ocon staying in the lineup there.
Yeah, when you look at Fernando Alonso's value, it's just too high at this point for what he brings to the table.
Yeah. And he's been good at this circuit in the past, of course, but and was good last week as well, coming back up through the field a little bit. But just, at 15 million or whatever it is still just.
It's 15, yeah.
Yeah, just
the
a
fact
little
that he's
too
more
expensive.
than Carlos Sainz is just too expensive, too rich for my blood. Way too.
Well,
rich
what?
for
He's
my
like
blood.
1.2, 1.3 million more than Lando Norris still. Like, sheesh.
Like that's.
I'm not convinced he's the number one at the team right now for crying out loud, let alone that much.
Insanity. It's just name value, obviously, at this point. But,
and hey, you know what? If you're getting people to pick them, then hey, I'm not going to complain. But
yeah, fair enough. But that's the driver's side of things. You make the switch here to McLaren for the constructor, and you can take this one first because you make the change. So go for it.
The change is primarily so that I can open it up to get a bigger name driver, as I've kind of seen these last couple of weeks. The $6-7 million difference between Red Bull and the next constructor just isn't really worth the safe pick that it is to go with the bigger name. It's better to take the swing on one of the lesser constructors and get somebody else in the lineup there. So that's partially the reason there. Also, McLaren has just been really damn good, even when they haven't qualified amazing like last time Lando didn't have the best qualifying, and obviously Ricciardo was absolutely in shambles in Q1 there, but they have the race pace to back it up where they can come back through the field and get you those positional differences and get you those extra points as well. So I feel good about McLaren right now. I feel good about their consistency. Lando's outperformed some of my expectations early this season. Remains to be seen if he can maintain that pace for the whole season or whether it's just a hot start and it fades a little bit like it was a bit last season. Interested to see when Ricciardo maybe starts to find his footing, how long that takes, and when if it does happen, how the team dynamic maybe changes over the course of the season. But at least right now, outside of the big two, McLaren is easily the number 3 constructor right now. And for the price difference, it just makes too much sense for myself to switch there and get another name like Leclerc instead of Tsunoda.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So
yep.
I started the race this season with Bahrain. I went Red Bull as my constructor. And then since
then, it's not like they've been bad.
No, absolutely not. But I mean, my success so far has been built around having McLaren as this very solid, consistent, reliable constructor that will get you finishes and be there at the end. And Lando Norris has done spectacularly well to bring that car up as well. And, beating the likes of sometimes a Red Bull here or consistently beating the Ferrari. So I see way too much value in the McLaren. I think it's way too undervalued right now compared to what you look at with the Red Bull. Sure, it's not going to get you the race wins and stuff, but for what they bring, getting consistent top 7, 8 finishes for sure every weekend, it seems, it's way too much value to then have somebody like Perez for myself in my lineup where I could have him or instead of having the Red Bull as the constructor and then, someone like Yuki Tsunoda or somebody like that as this other guy. It just makes way, way too much sense to have a little bit of a lesser constructor. And I've been seeing that as well with the value usages here with some people making some changes as McLaren has owned 30% of people in fantasy right now, Red Bull 32. So they're very, very close amongst the percentage of people that are
Red Bull
playing.
has outpointed them, of course. Been like 10 to 15 point difference, but
it's when 152 to 133. So it's actually 20 points, basically 19 points. I'm taking a heavier hitter.
3 races as well.
Yeah,
so
but heavy hitter, I'm taking that in the driver lineup.
And that's the thing, right? So when I look, for example, Tsunoda had 2 points last time versus somebody like a Perez or a Leclerc who are getting 20 plus and can be a turbo driver option for you as well and all these things. It just makes a little bit more sense to maybe go the riskier route and try and swing on that driver in the lineup there versus the constructor. But you can see obviously the value for going and spending the budget on the constructor there. I've tried it earlier on this season. With the tighter budget, I feel like it's better to go with a riskier pick for myself there. So that's kind of the reasoning why the switch up there for myself. Now I could easily see, because I'm switching to it, both McLarens crash out on lap 1.
Don't
and
do
it's
that
just
to me, man.
shambles,
I don't need that.
But, hey, I'm sorry. I bring bad luck wherever I go.
We're the same boat in this one, so don't bring your negative energy over here to the McLaren side of things. We've been nice and happy so far without you, so don't mess it up. But yeah, it's definitely a cool strategic element here in terms of, what works best and what hasn't worked. And, the flexibility of having 3 different usages, switchability of each race weekend, that really helps to try and budget in a valuable lineup that works best for your situation. So I think I found my lineup that I'm pretty happy with. Gasly's the one that I'm just a little bit unsure of, but I think he'll turn the corner a little bit. It's just whether or not it will be substantial or have the longevity to sustain itself for the remainder of the season as AlphaTauri starts to look towards the 2022 car and as the season rolls along. So I'll have to do some tweaking for sure, but for this back-to-back weekend, I have no reason in changing anything except for a turbo driver to Sainz.
Absolutely. And I feel pretty solid about my lineup right now. Last week, I wasn't feeling great, just given the lack of budget I had. I had 200,000 over the baseline 100 million versus some other teams like yourself who have like 2 million essentially more than me to use. But the Ocon play worked out very well for myself, helped boost that budget, and hoping more of the same so I can maybe catch up and get that Perez usage or something like that. We'll see.
We'll see. We will definitely see on that front. But that's our fantasy picks for the Spanish Grand Prix this upcoming weekend. Let's make our predictions for the race itself. We have a big milestone potentially on hand this weekend, Kyle, and that starts on Saturday. Lewis Hamilton going for his 100th career pole position in Formula One. And let's throw this out there. I made the prediction that it would happen here at the Spanish Grand Prix.
I said it would happen at Portugal.
So I'm going with Lewis Hamilton to win pole.
I was like, what, 7,000th of a second off from that one?
You had to have Verstappen to lose pole.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it was very close. Or even, you had to have Hamilton win pole in Bahrain kind of thing. So, I'm very happy with going with Lewis Hamilton for pole position. He seems like this is a track that obviously suits him very well. How many has he won in a row here? Is it five in a row here at this or
4 in a row
at the Barcelona, the Catalunya? Four in a row. But nonetheless, Hamilton, I'll take 100 pole position comes here. My preseason prediction comes to fruition. I get that right. He gets 100 poles here for the Spanish Grand Prix.
I'm going to say he doesn't get that extra pole position.
Of course you would.
The question is how annoying to you do I want to be?
Who do you go with?
How annoying do I want to be? And I'm going to be annoying. I'm going to take Valtteri Bottas to get back-to-back pole positions. He's going to get the pole here at Catalunya. He's actually been pretty solid in qualifying over his career here at the Spanish Grand Prix. So I'll be annoying. I'll say that you don't get it right with the extra pole coming here at Spain. I'm going to say that Valtteri Bottas gets it done.
You're boring. You're so...
Whoa. If anyone's boring, it's you for taking Hamilton.
No. This is my preseason prediction. If it wasn't, maybe I'd switch it up. But I'm sticking to my guns here. I'm loyal. I'm going with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it is qualifying, and wherever you qualify basically is where you're going to finish unless you have something happen to you in the race itself. So it's going to be crucial this weekend. Of course, they've switched the circuit up a little bit, turn 10 becoming a swooping turn now instead of a hard braking zone. So another little twist to the actual race weekend itself. We'll see if that has any impact. Oh, yeah, lovely, hey? You can just send it in there and try and send it too wide into a slick tarmac. Gotta love it. Dear Lord, help me with Formula One sometimes at this track. So that's the pole prediction. Let's make the podium. Let's do best of the rest, first. First. Who do you have for behind the Mercedes and the Red Bull this weekend?
It's boring, but Lando Norris. I think Carlos Sainz is going to be a nice challenge for him, but just the pace of the McLaren right now is just a bit too much for me to go and bet on a Carlos Sainz to go out and get that best of the rest moniker. So I'll say Lando Norris gets it done in a career best at this Spanish Grand Prix.
I'm going to say that the home kid doesn't. I'm going to say Carlos Sainz is the best of the rest this weekend. I think Lando Norris and him are going to have a really good battle this weekend. What a story that would be if Lando and Carlos battled it out at Carlos's home track. That would be really cool. Of course, the former teammates. So we'd really love to see that. I think it could happen. And I really like Sainz's speed so far this weekend. And, of course, over his career here, not scoring outside the top 10. He's always been in the points. So that goes in Sainz's favor for me here this weekend. I think the Ferrari will be close to the McLaren. Better. I think some just have the edge on Norris here. So I'll go with him as the best of the rest. But let's look at the podium itself. You have Valtteri Bottas on pole. What do you have in third place here at the beginning of the podium places?
I won first for the last one. You go first for this one, sir.
Oh, okay, fine. I'm going to go with Sergio Perez gets his first podium for Red Bull Racing this weekend. He places third here for the Spanish Grand Prix.
I'll take Bottas to finish third here. I want to say that Red Bull has that kind of day where Perez can go out and get that third, but I just don't know if they're necessarily that close where it's going to be like that group of four all battling. It might be the top two and then the next two battle, but I still think that Perez is still adjusting to the new car and just needs a little bit more time until he really gets that race pace behind him. So I'll say Bottas still finishes third here.
Okay. Who's finishing second for you then? Because we'll go in the
second for myself. Similar to last time out, Max Verstappen finishes second here. I wanted to go out and pick the Red Bull to do it. I just think just right now, at least, I think the momentum is swinging back in the Mercedes favor. It's been a Mercedes absolutely dominated track recently, looking at Lewis Hamilton winning 4 straight. So it's I don't know about you, but it's pretty tough to pick against that. So I'll say Max Verstappen puts up a good fight, but finishes second.
Yeah, for me, it's the same way. I have Max Verstappen in second, and then, of course, we have Lewis Hamilton winning the they're just so good right now, and Hamilton's just on a different level, I think, right now this season. He's had to work for his wins, and he's had to fight to get his points back, and I think that's just been one crucial element. And like Nico Rosberg said after the Portuguese Grand Prix, I think Max Verstappen's really finding out how good Lewis Hamilton really is right now. Like this is prime Lewis Hamilton right now. We're seeing what he's capable of behind the wheel of his Mercedes, and you can argue it's just the car, but when you look at the drives that he's done so far this season, you can't make that argument. This guy is otherworldly in a racing seat. So I think it makes sense. I think Lewis Hamilton's going to be on the charge here for win number 100. Once again, I think Red Bull are really going to go after the World Championship this season, but I think they'll find their groove a little bit later on. This is just too dominant of a Mercedes circuit for me to say a Red Bull wins here, despite Verstappen's first win in Formula One coming here.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? Like we could very easily see Max Verstappen at a track where he went out and got his first win. Of course, let's not forget, both Mercedes crashed out in that one in pretty spectacular fashion.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, I don't know. It might have escaped your memory. But it's a track, of course, that he's excelled at in the past, and he's got a better car by the looks of things this season. Could easily go out and spoil the party for Mercedes, but 4 straight for Hamilton, just a little too tough to bet against that for myself, and easily, or at least you agree with me on that one. So definitely interested to see how things go in qualifying, at least less so for the race, because if we're being honest, not much is going to change past turn 1 of the first lap, but interested to see where some of the chips fall for this one, because there's some teams trending in good directions, some other ones trending in opposite directions. After a start that looked like Red Bull might have kind of the dominant car of this season and have that step ahead of Mercedes, kind of flipped the script a little bit last week, where it was kind of Mercedes with the favorable car and Red Bull trying to play catch up a little bit. Interested to see if that continues into this weekend, at least so far through free practice. It appears that Mercedes has the edge, but I think it'll be closer than Portimao. And then, of course, going into Monaco, which is a track that we would expect Red Bull to be very strong at. I think as we get into the thick of this season, each race is just going to get more and more dramatic and interesting as we get into it. But very interested to see where kind of everyone stands after the Spanish Grand Prix.
Definitely. I'm in complete agreement there. Not expecting much from the Grand Prix itself, but you just got to get through this one and then just, see what happens from here. Go to Monaco, and, that race may not be the best itself, but the spectacle that Monaco is will make that weekend worthwhile rather than this one here in Barcelona, Catalonia. So, that'll do it for the F1 preview episode here for the Spanish Grand Prix. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at The Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We really appreciate all your guys' support lately on the channel. It's been really great to see the growth lately. So thank you again. And all the links to our social channels will be in the description of the YouTube video. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. I will try and do my best to try and recap this Spanish Grand Prix after the weekend. And we'll see what happens at the end of it. But enjoy the racing nonetheless, everybody.